Hello, this is Gary Auden. I'm bringing you an Educast with Cetus, the case for hotel phones. With me today is John Grubb, Senior Vice President Marketing for Cetus. And John and I have talked in the past about this, and we came up with this presentation with these items that we think are important for you to consider when you're contemplating a hotel phone. Why is it a winner? Where does voicemail sit in? You really think about hotel phones, you think about services and security and emergency, but you don't always think about, can I choose the phone with a USB charging capability in it? Can I choose a phone that has Bluetooth connectivity? So we're going to start, John, with actually the first point I think is important. And it's, why is a room telephone in the hotel a winner? John?
Well, first of all, it's a money-making device, and that's been proven time after time over the years, because it's pre-programmed to generate telecom revenue, or room service revenue, particularly in full-service properties, and of course, to some extent in economy properties as well. And unlike a guest mobile device, which people bring in, which is not programmed to call through the front desk or call to the spa or call to the golf course, it automatically dials when the guest touches the pre-programmed guest service key to services. The room phone also provides an important emergency lifeline for guests inside the room, because it can track the exact location of the guest for emergency personnel. So whether the guest is reporting an emergency or going through an emergency themselves, they have the ability to just pick up the phone, dial a number, sometimes an emergency button that's right there on the phone, and call the front desk or whoever the phone is pre-programmed to ring. So definitely the room phone is a moneymaker, and the revenues that are gained from international revenues, calling, and some from domestic are still incremental revenue sources for hotel properties. And of course, anyone who can who wants to order room service within the hotel or call for pizza, the phone can be pre-programmed on a button to dial the local pizza place and have pizza delivered. So it's really a great device and a service to guests, and they appreciate it. And certainly most hoteliers understand that. And that's why when you go to a room, you're going to find a guest room phone.
Well, one of the points I think you were making, which didn't quite hear, is the person who's working in the hotel can tell the difference between an internal call and an external call and know how to handle it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So now that we've talked about the justifications for the room phone, let's start going through each of the points that we think were important. And the first one is, voice is still forever. And I think that was very interesting that you came up with a title like that, Voice is Forever, because no matter how much you text, people still speak.
Yes, they do. And people say, well, yeah, voice is forever, but I use my mobile phone when I'm in the room. And we all do that. I mean, we have to be honest. We all carry smart devices, whether it's a smartphone or a tablet with voice calling capability, into the room. And yet it's not connected normally to anything that's a part of the hotel. There's not a direct connection. But for international calling, we use our cell phone. We might use Skype or we might use something else, but the data shows that with 80% occupancy, you can run $15,000 to $20,000 a month in international revenue. And this was actual data provided to us by a major brand franchise.
Would you also say, though, that in a sense the phone in the room is always on, as where you, with a cell phone, you have to ask for service? Is that another important point?
You certainly do. It's always there. It's always plugged in. If it's an analog phone, it's plugged into an RJ11 or RJ14 jack. If it's a VoIP phone, and we manufacture and install both, they are definitely go right to the front desk, and the connection is expected by the guest.
Now let's move on to the next point, which I think is also important. That voicemail is still valuable in your hotel.
Well, it is. People do use the phone. They do get voicemails left on their phones. And one of the frustrations oftentimes guests have is they don't know how to pick up the phone and dial it. And that's why we created what's called one-touch voicemail retrieval. It's a patented technology that we put on all of our speaker phones. And so it enables the guest to simply see the blinking light, touch it, it speed dials the guest into voicemail, and automatically turns on the speaker.
Now, one of the points you made earlier, and this is the point I'm bringing up next, is when I have a phone in my room, I expect it to be connected to various kinds of services. Would you go into that a bit more?
Well, a major full-service Los Angeles hotel provided this data. So guest service button dials, I'm talking about guest service that are pre-programmed to go to certain locations within the hotel. Totaled 46,000 touches in 2010 and 51,000 in 2011. And keeping calls over 5,000 and up to 6,000 in 2011. Wake-up calls 23,000 and 37,000, and concierge calls 9,300 and 11,200 in 2011. So you see a pattern here. You see a pattern of them increasing during the time the data was being managed. And it proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that particularly in a full-service hotel, that definitely guests expect to be able to have pre-programmed guest service keys that they can simply touch and get in contact for hotel services.
What this points out to me is you're discussing things where they're getting a couple of hundred calls a day internally just from the room phones. Is that correct?
Yes, and you have to be staffed to take it, and that indeed is part of hospitality. It's serving the public and making sure that guests receive answers and service when they call. And it's good for the hotel, and that's why to ensure a positive guest experience and keep telecom revenues in-house, you need pre-programmed speed dials on the guest room phone.
It would also seem, though, that if I offer good services and quick services, I improve my customer loyalty.
Absolutely. In fact, a recent study showed that millennials, up to 50% of millennials expect food service, and these are young people, young travelers, young road warriors coming in. They expect food service in a hotel. So they're going to stay in hotels that offer food service, and despite the fact that they're very technically savvy and are going to have smart devices, they're still going to pick up and dial for room service.
Now, let's change subject a little bit because I think the next subject is very important. If I don't have a phone in the room, I really don't have connection to security capabilities within the hotel. Is that correct?
As a guest, you're on your own. You have your cell phone, and depending on who you want to reach, family, friends, that's fine. But if you need to reach somebody on the hotel property, it's relatively impossible. Now, there are some PBX manufacturers that are creating some capability with cell phones to connect to the hotels, but that's not a real tested and sure technology at this point, because with Wi-Fi connectivity, you can get close, but close only counts in horseshoes. You know, when somebody's having an emergency, you need to know exactly where the call is coming from. And guests expect, particularly if they're government or military guests, to be able to plug into a landline and have a telephone connection. That's preferred for security reasons.
Would you expand on the emergency question on the next slide, please?
Well, like I said, there are manufacturers that continue to develop systems that minutely track guests' mobile devices, but really you have to plug into an RJ11, RJ14, and RJ45 network jack in the room for the PBX to actually know exactly what room the call came from. So if it's in room 22, they can immediately send emergency personnel to help the person or to talk to the person.
Well, that means you can get much more precise location information from the hotel phone than you might get from the cell phone. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's great to be able to call your family if you're sick in LA, but they're at home in New York. But what you need is some help right down the hall or down on the first floor from emergency personnel, perhaps.
Now let's change the direction here because there's a couple of things we're going to talk about next, which most people don't know that you offer. One is USB charging as a convenience with a phone.
Well, we know from research that guests are bringing multiple mobile devices into the room. We've talked about that already. You know, you're bringing a tablet, they're bringing cell phones, and they want to use them. And so they have to be recharged. All of these mobile devices have to be recharged. And it's frustrating to have to bring your plug in and find an outlet down behind the bed or behind the desk or behind the nightstand. Isn't it more convenient to have a USB charging station right on the desktop or right on the nightstand where a guest can conveniently just plug in and charge a tablet or a smartphone? And that's why we came out with E-Series USB. It's an E-Series phone. It's a pedestal type phone that has a USB charging port built into the base on each side.
I think the next slide about Bluetooth really surprised me is that you provided Bluetooth connectivity to the phone.
Yes, Bluetooth integration is a very popular item among guests that are traveling, and it actually replaces the need for the media player in the room, because once the guest connects via Bluetooth, which is very simple, just like you do with a speaker in your car or with the phone system in your car, you just connect, and you can stream your music through the M-Series phone, and it plays through high-quality speakers. There are also USB charging ports, you know, on that particular phone too. And one of the advantages of pairing the phone as well is that you can actually use your mobile device as the cordless handset in the room.
Now, you're bringing up the term benefits, and I'd like you to go through the two classes of benefits here. Obviously, benefits to the guests. There's also benefits to the hoteliers. Can you talk about both, please?
Well, for guests, it's room-to-room calling. There's no other way to call a room conveniently other than a cell phone. If you are traveling with someone, you know how to reach them, certainly you can call them in the room. But room-to-room calling is expected from a guest room phone. Outbound for local and international calls. And of course, as we've talked already, hotel and information services for the guests are important, as well as security and emergency lifeline. For hoteliers, room phones continue to drive revenue, incremental revenue for outbound calls, for hotel services. And return guest revenues, as you cited, Gary, are really important. And so some of the newer phones like E-Series USB or the Teledex M-Series with Bluetooth integration are really going to bring guests back because it's easy for them to charge devices and they like being able to hear their favorite music over the phone.
Would you say, and continue with the hoteliers, that these benefits are there for both the small facility as well as the large one?
Absolutely. The smaller economy hotels may not typically buy phones with pre-programmed guest service keys on them because they don't offer restaurant services or various hotel services. But it's still important to provide that security and emergency lifeline for the guests and provide a vehicle for room-to-room calling and outbound local and international calls.
Titus, this has been in this business an awfully long time. Would you give us some background about the company?
Well, 30 plus years. We were first to develop the hotel phone and introduce the Diamond series as Teledex back in the early 80s. We're a U.S. corporation. Our products are preferred and approved by all the leading hotel brands globally. And all the PBX, IPPBX, and cloud phone system providers have interop certified our phones. We ship about 1 million phones annually. We have 30 million installed globally, and we support, you know, somewhere around 5 million actively on a regular basis globally. And we're very active and effective with VoIP phones. We have over 300,000 ports, VoIP ports, installed worldwide. And we support all of this with locations in the U.S., the UK, China, Malaysia, Dubai, and India.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like people to take a look at this slide of resources. When I looked at your site, you had a lot of information in blog posts, newsletters, products, podcasts. So there's a number of places to go to learn more about this. There's contact information on the last slide, and we've talked to John Grubb here. But here are other contacts that are available to you for learning more about what CETIS offers. Well, thank you very much, John, and I appreciate your time, and I thank you, viewers, for watching this EduCast.
Thank you for viewing this EduCast. Goodbye.